Hello, everyone, and welcome to the CEO and Market Expert interviews. I'm your host, Lucian. Some of you know me as Triangle Investor from X or former Twitter. Today, I'm joined by Bruce Lane, Executive Director for GTI Energy, Australian-based uranium exploration and development company with assets in the US, specifically Wyoming and Utah. Bruce, thank you for coming to my show for the first time. It is great to have you.
Yeah, hi, Lucian. Thanks for having me, and it's really good to be with you.
Bruce, let's start with the introduction of you. Can you please share your origin story and how and when did you become a part of GTI Energy?
Yeah, look, it's probably easier to start at the start. I've been involved with GTI since 2018. We vended some assets in Utah into GTI, and then I took over and ran the company from that point forward. Prior to that, I've been involved for about 20 years in the origination, financing, and running of mostly ASX listed companies, and then some private entities as well that. Most of which would subsequently end up in a reverse takeover transaction or in a public vehicle. I got involved with uranium for the first time back in around 2009, 2010, so prior to Fukushima, with a Korean project. It had a very significant uranium vanadium project just about 5 hours south of Seoul. So we recapitalized that company at about 1.5 cents, and then it sort of ran on to 20, and Fukushima happened. Prior to that, prior to living in Perth, my wife's from Perth, and she dragged me here from London. We lived in London for about 10 years, and then prior to that, I'm originally from New Zealand and grew up farming in the bottom of the South Island of New Zealand. So originally, worked with big companies like Unilever and Heinz, and did an MBA at London Business School, and then got involved in a bit of .com stuff, but eventually ended up in Perth, and so I had a new career from there. So I had 20 years in resources, funding and running mostly exploration companies and early development companies.
Okay. Bruce, what is your take on the current uranium markets? Give us your overview of the market.
Yeah, look, I don't have any views that are contrary to the major commentators in the marketplace. I think we obviously look at the global macro situation, but I'm much more focused on the US because that's why we established a presence in the US and why we've invested in projects in the US, because we saw this interesting situation where the biggest buyer of uranium in the world, in the US, really was producing nothing at home, and we look at that long-term market failure, if you like, and the problem that the US producers were competing against megatons to megawatts, and effectively couldn't compete against pounds that were available to the utilities at a price lower than the marginal cost of production, so they all shut down. So I think the US has been the most extreme example of underinvestment around the world, but that has been the thematic around the world: underinvestment in exploration, underinvestment in in conversion, enrichment, and all manner of sectors of the supply chain for nuclear fuel, because simply nuclear fuel was in less demand, and Fukushima only exacerbated that. And so here we are. We've got a massive supply-demand gap and a massive engine of growth behind the nuclear power business, and just a period in time when there isn't enough uranium to supply the current requirements. We're 40 or 50 million pounds a year short of the current requirements, and that's, I guess, taking into account some financial buyers, but call it 40 or 50 million pounds for argument's sake. Without accounting for the future demand, which we know now is real and baked into the future scenario. So the price has to respond. It has responded. When we first started back in 2018, it was $20 a pound, and things got exciting at 30, and then it went to 50, 60. All of a sudden, it was at 90, and now it's above 100, and people are there's plenty of people willing to call it higher. And I hope they're right, because it helps us, but it doesn't need to go. It doesn't need to go a lot higher from where it is for us, because our projects look really interesting at a price significantly below where it is. So, look, I think it's stronger for longer, and the thesis is good, and I would say that, but I truly believe that.
Okay. What about uranium equities? And I'm talking specifically Australian uranium equities. Are is, there is a feeling that sometimes, not sometimes, let's say always, Australian uranium equities lagging compared to American Canadian stocks. Why is that?
Look, they always seem to wait until the first day of the week to see what direction is. So
Of
Monday
course.
is always a bit squidgy, and Tuesday's better. So at that very micro level, definitely the market takes a lead from North America. Look, I think domestically, and I know you've had others from Australia on, and you've discussed the political climate in Australia's
Yeah.
is mixed, to say the least. So at a kind of retail investor point of view, there isn't the awareness of what's happening in the rest of the world that you might have in North America or Canada, or in particular, but and even in Europe, where you've got France and the UK and many other countries investing heavily in nuclear power and not still debating whether or not it's a good idea. A bit of that is holds back the Australian market. I think I think AUKUS will come along, and maybe Jonathan Cauldron's right, and the WA government will hear the Koreans and the Japanese up and loosen the rules. So that will have an effect. I think there's a lot of liquidity and investor interest in general in junior mining in Australia, probably more so than most other markets in the world. And uranium's going to get its moment in the sun. It's just going to take the lithium. There's been a lot of focus on lithium, and it's a lot of money invested in gold. And I think that it's now becoming, this season, if you like, this year, it feels like it's much more likely that uranium equities in Australia are going to get more love, if for want of a better term. So I think that's changing, but I think it has lagged behind for a variety of reasons. So, I don't see any reason why it can't improve a lot this year. I think the sentiment is there in the broking community, and certainly at the retail level, from people I've been talking to over the last few weeks, is certainly a heightened interest. I can't account for what happened on Friday last week or the last couple of days in the marketplace, but I'm once again remain optimistic that after 18 months of sort of sideways and backwards trading for nano caps and the uranium stocks, that we will get a turnaround. And if uranium goes to $150, as some are suggesting, then I think that will obviously make people sit up and take notice.
Okay, yeah. Your projects, like I said at the beginning, you're in Utah and in Wyoming. You have 3 advanced projects in Wyoming, and I would like to cover them all. The first is maybe I will pronounce that right, Herma or Herma?
No, Herma is, I think, the correct pronunciation,
Okay.
although
Herma project. It's in the
yeah.
Powder River Basin. It has inferred mineral resource estimate on the project. Give us some overview and history of this project, please.
Yeah, look, the drilling was conducted there in the 70s predominantly, and it was conducted during the period when oil companies were very involved in uranium exploration in the US, and so that the data was generated back then and existed as paper logs. We were fortunate enough to be able to acquire that data, and through that process put together the land package for the project. And so we got off to a really fast start with it. We were able to digitize that data and create a resource off that digitized data. What we then did is went out and did some check drilling, some twinning of holes, verification drilling, essentially right at the back end of last year. That drilling campaign to test some of our exploration hypotheses about the trends, the extensions along trend, and also at depth of the mineralization in that area. So we were able to come up with a 5.7 million pound or 5.71 million pound at 600 odd ppm for low Herma. It has a fairly significant exploration target on top of that. I think the top end of it's in the range 5 to 10 million pounds. So we think at the bottom end, around 10 million pounds is achievable there. Although, that's only an exploration target. We need to do further drilling to bring that into inferred. We also believe that there's reasonable density of drilling in a few areas of the project, and so we think we could bring pounds now into measured and indicated, but what we'll do is conduct a larger program this year. So we permitted 60 plus holes, drilled left that are still permitted that we could drill. But what we've done is taken what we've learned from the last program. Matt Hartman, who joined us in January, he's got an extensive experience in situ recovery projects. He worked at Smith Highland Ranch, Cameco's project 10 miles away from Low Herma. He's also worked on Rosita, which is Encore's. He's worked at Church Rock, which is Larrabide, and he's also worked on some other Encore projects. So he's an engineer and a geologist. He joined us in January formally. He had done some consulting work for us prior, so he's been getting his feet under the table with the project and working on planning that next program. So what we're in the process of doing is finalising exactly where we want to put the next lot of holes, and then we'll go through and permit a change to the current permit that we have, and that'll put us in a position to drill a larger program targeted at building the resource size, but also bringing some of those pounds into higher classification, testing a bit more of that exploration potential that we've got there, and then we'll probably look to update the resource, probably in the third to fourth quarter of the year, depending on how we go with the drilling. So Low Herma is definitely our lead project at this point. I think if Nuclear Fuels, who are with Bill Sheriff, are kind of partnered up, if you like, with Encore, and they have made the public statement that if they can find 10 million pounds, they know that Encore will be interested in moving it forward. We know that the Shirley Basin project, which is owned by UR Energy, and is just awaiting an FID decision. That's an 8.8 million pound project, 30 miles away from Lost Creek in the Great Divide Basin. And they're developing that as a satellite. We know that the capex for that, the stated capex under the public PEA, is around $33 million. So, we know that these projects, once you get into that sort of above 5 and close to 10, in that range, and that PEA was struck at $65 too, by the way, for Shirley Basin, that they certainly start to become viable, even though, they don't look like an arrow. Yeah. They're not hundreds of millions of pounds or 50 million pounds. They're modest, but the capex is very modest by comparison, and the timeframes are more reasonable. It still doesn't happen in 5 minutes, but they're very developable projects, and they look like the projects that surround us. And no two deposits are the same, obviously, but they're very similar. There'd be an alkaline leach project, unlike Peninsula, which has switched across to acid, and Boss Resources, which is acid, and Kazakhstan, which is acid. Everything else in Wyoming at this stage, I believe, is alkaline leach. And I think UR Energy gets good recoveries. I think John Cash is talking about in excess of 90% recoveries. The costs seem to be modest. All-in sustaining cash seems to be in the range, maybe it's 35 at the low end, but I think more likely 40. I don't, I'm just going on public disclosures from others, or up to 50.
Sure.
So that's Low Herma, and we think that's our focus going forward.
Yeah, just quick return to the drilling. When do you anticipate for this drilling to start?
Yeah, we haven't made any statement to the market about when that would occur, and we're leading up to doing that to clarify the quantum or the size of the program, and where we want to and when we want to drill. But look, my expectation is that it could be in around that sort of July, August time.
Okay.
We'll get started earlier if we can, but it's more likely to be that part of the year rather than in the next couple of months.
Okay, is this your flagship project, or you don't have a flagship project?
No, we definitely call this our flagship project. It's got the pounds. We have our total pounds defined, inferred 7.4 million, of which low Herma is 5.71, with an exploration target on that at the top end, an additional 10 million pounds. So, it's the most advanced project we have. It's 10 miles or so from Cameco's, Smith Highland Ranch, which is the largest permitted facility in the US. And so it's, right in the middle of the Powder River. It's 40 miles from Energy Fuels and, UEC and, it's definitely one of the sweet spots for us. But the other projects have real value. We're just sequencing and focusing on low Herma for that reason.
Yeah, it makes sense. You mentioned your neighbors, geology, etc. But what about the infrastructure on the project? Do you have full infrastructure on the project?
Yeah, look, the Wyoming is actually well serviced with roads and power and the like. The project has some oil and gas activity in the local area, close by, and so there's actually electricity there, very accessible. There's quite a significant road that runs next to our project, and then the other side of the road there's a PG&E wind farm, which used to be the Dave Johnson coal mine. So a rehabilitated coal mine with a wind farm on it now, and so you've got in situ uranium, wind farm, coal mines, and oil and gas wells. So there's plenty of infrastructure on the project. It's certainly within easy distance of a town, Glenrock, just down the road, which is where our drillers at the moment are based, by the way. So it's good from that point of view. Access is relatively straightforward for a mining project for sure.
Okay, let's cover some more specifically on the Great Divide Basin project. Give us some overview in history and, of course, some grades on the property, infrastructure, neighbors, geology, etc.
Yeah, the Great Divide was that was our first Wyoming project, and so our first season of drilling occurred there at what we call our Thor project. So Thor is around 15 miles from UR Energy's Lost Creek plant. It's all on BLM land there. Once again, very easy to access. It's we had good success with the drilling. We got good thicknesses, good grades. We're pretty confident in the porosity and the disequilibrium, those sort of things in that area. The geology is very well understood. And where we're at, we also then drilled on other projects close by. Managed to secure a couple of state sections that adjoined that property and grew it. So we were planning to continue on and continue investing in the Great Divide, but then we managed to secure the low Herma project, and so we switched our focus. Sorry, excuse me. So we really have focused on low Herma since then, because we really felt we could build a larger project faster in that spot. But we're very confident in the mineralization, and really what we need to do is put together a program that builds out the size of that resource there in the Great Divide. And so we will look to do further in the future, but maybe we won't drill this season. We'll see.
Okay, same question about the infrastructure over there.
Yeah, so the project is favourable for sure. We've got sealed roads quite close by, and then oil and gas access roads and BLM roads with easy access into the project. The Lost Creek mine, about 15 miles away, the topography is very similar, and so we know that that's been a very successful project and gives us a lot of confidence that you can build a mine in that area. Given you go through the process obviously and do everything properly, that there's a good chance of building something there.
Okay, let's move to Green Mountain project in Wyoming. You have that is the third project you have over there. Same question, overview and history of this project.
Yeah, so Green Mountain's actually really part of the Great Divide Basin. It's only sort of 10, 15 miles north of our Thor project, and actually it's just a geological occurrence or feature in what would have been otherwise a continuation of the basin, and that's all been eroded off the granite mountains, which are further north. So it's been uplifted, and we have part of the downslope, southern side of Green Mountain. So it's not up on the top of the mountain, it's on the downslope. We've got some geological information, historical information from oil wells and other exploration information from Kerr McGee in that area. And there's a mine right there, which is a Rio mine, and there's Rio deposits immediately to the north, quite significant ones there. They're accessed or drilled from the top of Green Mountain, so they're quite deep, around 1,500 feet. And we think there's, quite a significant endowment in that area, many tens of millions of pounds in a number of deposits. And then immediately to the south, we've got Lost Soldier, which is one of UR Energy's deposits, and we've got the Jab deposit, which is UEC's, and we've got there's a group called the Antelope projects, which are also UEC's. So it's in a really interesting spot. We know there's mineralization there. We conducted geophysics in the last season, which has identified some significant radiometric anomalies there, and we think we've got a number of miles of trend. We had a drill program planned, but what we did is say, look, it's a bit more geologically discontinuous than other parts of our project areas, and it's quite a big area. It's about 13,000 acres, I think. And so we really wanted to hone in on the best bits of it and make sure that we were super efficient, or as efficient as we could be, about where we put the drill bits. So it's kind of almost drill ready. We're just tweaking the targets now as we speak. That's an ongoing conversation. The permitting's the next step. So we want to create an option there to drill, and if we can, we'd like to get in and drill it this year. We think it shows real promise to deliver pounds, but once again, there is a limitation to what we can execute, both from a financial and an organizational capacity point of view. So, we may be able to do something with that this year, and I hope we do. But once again, it's probably the earliest stage of the projects in many respects. So having said that, we do have a lot of information about it.
Okay, but are you searching for more projects to stake over there, more land, or you have sufficient amount of land, so you will stick with your current projects, or are your eyes open for more land?
Yeah, the eyes are never closed. It's we're always on the lookout. I think we have been adding to the projects in small chunks where it makes sense as onto contiguous holdings, and we've done that on all of the projects really over the course of the last couple of years. And so we will continue to do that. There's incremental opportunities. We've got some neighbours, some big neighbours, some small neighbours that may be sitting on bits of ground that we would like to have, and some of them may be prepared to talk, and some of them want too much, and some of them don't want to know us at all. So it is a mixed bag, but we are active in looking at all of those options. I mean, there are clearly some big players there with a lot of ground that they are very unlikely to get to from an exploration point of view anytime soon, because they're focusing on getting back into production and on their near mine development. So anything that's sitting out there that is kind of interesting but doesn't have a resource on it, there may be opportunities around those things, but it'll take a while to play that out, I think, if it happens at all.
Okay, your company also has land holdings in Henry Mountains region of Utah. It's an early stage, as I read, but what can you tell me about this property?
Yeah, well, it's the Henry Mountains complex. It's in the Colorado Plateau, and so it's of the same ilk as the productive mines in that region, and it was mined historically, and ore sold into the buying schedule that used to be part of the supply for Blanding or White Mesa, owned by Energy Fuels. So, like every other project in that part of the world, and okay, I'll put Anfield aside because obviously, Anfield's working towards developing the Tickaboo or Shooting Canyon mill, and I know that Western Uranium are doing something just up the road, and literally that is just up the road from Hanksville. We're just down the road from Hanksville. It's very close to where we are. So there's a lot of mill development going on there. Well, with those two, they're both within very easy distance of our projects. And then I think Mark Chalmers at Energy Fuels, I think he has mentioned that they may put out an ore buying schedule at some stage soon. I haven't seen that, but it's certainly a possibility. So that area is starting to come alive again, and there's very high grades relatively in that area, and the vanadium content is, sometimes in the range 3 to 5 times the uranium. Quite a valuable ore as long as you've got a circuit that will extract both those minerals. So that these projects are shallow. Ours are 20 or 30 feet deep. There's historical mine shafts on them. There's a lot of drill holes in the properties. We've managed to get a hold of historical data. We've gamma logged a lot of holes, and we've drilled holes ourselves. And we've put together a land package there to give us a continuous holding, which has the potential, we believe, to yield a meaningful number of pounds of both uranium and vanadium. There's some exploration required to get at that next step, and it would be modest in the scheme of things. But it's back to the same story. Where do we believe that the best investment is for our shareholders to create value over the short term? And we believe it's better for us to focus on advancing low Herma at the moment. But that project in Utah is a very interesting project, particularly with everything that's going on in the Colorado Plateau.
Yeah.
We're watching it closely. Yep.
Sure. You said that drilling was done over there. Do you know approximate year and the amount of drilling done on the property?
Yeah, you're stretching me because it's in my memory bank somewhere, but I think in 2020, and we put out significant releases about all that. It's all out in the public domain. And I apologize. I should know how many feet we drilled, but it was a substantial campaign of I think a few hundred holes, and because they were shallow, it's not expensive. You're only drilling down to say 30 feet. It's quick, relatively easy to access with the right equipment, and and the grades are really good. So we might talk about it more in the future, but it's certainly something that we'll look at ways to commercialize that as we go forward.
Okay, I got it. Bruce, one question regarding the company heading in the future. Is your goal to become a uranium producer or sell the company before by adding value or on advancing the projects in Wyoming? I know it's a hard question, but you probably have the ultimate goal for you and the company.
Yeah, look, it is a hard question, and particularly with the way the supply-demand scenario is, that we really don't know where that's going to end up. The geopolitical factors, US government support, there are so many different factors going on or influencing the environment at the moment, and I think it's moving quite fast at the moment in all respects. So for us to make a judgment and say, hey, we're going to build this up and then sell it and be definitive about that is very difficult. I mean, clearly, what we're trying to do is generate options, but they all come back to, for the most part, they come back to us doing the same thing, and that's to build value into the project in the normal course. And by that, I mean, we move it towards development, because the further it is along that path and the more real it is, the higher the value should be, both as a development project with an NPV and an IRR that makes sense from a funding point of view, or to a utility who wants to guarantee supply, or in some form of intermediary, or to an acquiring company that would place a strategic valuation on the assets. And it really comes down to what's best for our shareholders. If we can get an outcome very quickly, then on an NPV basis, it is potentially more attractive depending on what that outcome is. So I really don't have an answer, except it all comes back to us really delivering the project closer to economics, and that really suggests that we go to a PEA as soon as we can on that project, And that's, that's really what our thinking is, that, whatever we do, that's the next step. And so we'll do that. And then the rest of it, to a certain extent, takes care of itself.
You said you don't have an answer. You just gave me an answer. So thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. What about share structure? If you can talk a little bit, your share registry, do you have some big shareholders in the company? Of course, the ones you can disclose. The share structure, how does it look in your case?
Yeah, look, we've got slightly over 2 billion shares on issue, and that's partly a product of you could say we started too early in the uranium game and invested back in 2018, 2019, and we've unfortunately had a couple of down rounds through that period. So we've got reasonable number of shares on issue, although it's really only just a number as far as we're concerned. So we don't have a large institutional presence on our register. We don't have anybody with a declared interest over 5%. We've got 3,800 retail shareholders. We had more than that, but we had done an unmarketables parcel buyback a little while ago. So yeah, we've got quite a retail-driven register at this point, and we've got a very supportive broker behind us here in Perth who's been with us since 2018. Well, the company in 2018, and my involvement in 2019. So they've been very supportive and really helped us out through the way. So their clients, obviously, we've got a strong following in their client base, but mostly, smaller and distributed investors. So we'd like to change that in the future, and I think there's an opportunity, over the next 3, 6, 9, 12, 18 months that maybe we get an opportunity to change that.
Okay, and Bruce, how are you getting your story out? What are you doing in the terms of the promotion of the company? What are your activities on that field?
We're talking to you.
Exactly.
So without meaning to
That's
really
the first step, the brilliant one. What are the next steps?
Look, we've done quite a lot of promotional work in the Australian market, and we really have a strong Australian following. We have done some work in North America, not a lot, and I think we've been pretty prudent with spending money through the last 18 months. Certainly for parts of that, we've really haven't done much promotional work at all, but I think we added a lot of value to the story last year in the ground. We started the year without any pounds in the ground in 2023 and finished up with 7.4 million across a couple of projects and an exploration target of in excess of 20. So, we really do think we've added some genuine value, and that our story is now has there's a receptive audience out there. Whereas, if you go back 12, even 6 months, people really weren't. They were sort of interested, but they weren't interested in a way that would mean they would want to invest. So, what we're doing this year is we'll go up and to PDAC and present at the Red Cloud conference prior to PDAC, and we've hired, as I said earlier, Matt Hartman, who's both an engineer and a geologist, but also a commercial guy. He worked for a large royalty company, the largest landholder in Wyoming. Who've got big trona projects. He's very good on the commercial side, but also has been involved in the uranium world for probably a couple of decades now. So he's able to respond to those on the ground opportunities to talk to people, both in the investment side and in the partnering side. So it makes a big difference to our ability to really get known and to have those conversations. So I think we have changed what we're doing. We're going to invest more money in terms of getting the story out, and obviously talking to you is just one of those things that is an opportunity for us to tell our story, and we'll be doing more of that over the coming months for sure.
Yeah, and the best part of your answer was now we have pounds in the ground, and pounds in the ground is probably the best promotion activity that you can have. Definitely a best one.
Yeah, we just got to make sure people know about it is the key, though. Yeah.
Exactly. So you said your team, it's you, it's your new ISR uranium specialist. Who else?
Yeah, we've got Jim Boffman on our board. Jim has been he did his geological training in Wyoming and Colorado, so he's a local. He was involved with High Plains Uranium and Cyclone. I think that High Plains was sold to Uranium One back in the last cycle for $50 or $60 million. So he's had lots of experience at an executional level as an executive, as a chairman, as a director, but also as a geologist. And he was kind of instrumental in bringing us the first projects in Wyoming. So he's a great help. There are a few people in the industry that have been around, since the 70s and 80s, and they know where all the stories came from and who's who, and it's very helpful to have people like Jim involved. So he's great. And we've got Peter Tomasevic on our board. He's a broker here in Perth and a corporate advisor here. And Nathan Ludy's our chairman, and he also is good experience in asset management and the resources space. He's been involved for many years and good connections with the broking and finance community. So I think we've got a pretty well-rounded team now. You can never have too many ISR uranium specialists. They're kind of hard to find. They're especially pretty hard to find that know about projects in a particular part of the world and in Wyoming. So I think we're in good stead for now, and we'll look to continue to build the team as the project advances, and we need those people.
Okay, Bruce, what about financials? Are you financially covered to execute all the things you said to me over here, or you will have to go on the markets and raise money this year?
Yeah, look, the answer, I guess is once again not straightforward. We ended the quarter with a couple of $1 million in the bank, the last quarter. So we've got some bond money that's due to come back from the state of Wyoming, and that's a few $100,000, around 300 Australian dollars. We hold a chunk of another company, which may be liquid at some stage in the future. It's under escrow at the moment, and we spun out a company called R8R Resources. So we have that as an asset. There's no plan for that at this point, but it's something we could work with. We don't have any royalties on our projects at the moment, apart from the state of Wyoming sort of state royalties. We haven't looked at funding anything through royalties. I think when the project's very immature, it's not really, a starter. But we think that as we go forward, there's certainly conversations that are possible in the future if we get the project advanced enough. We have listed options, 400 million listed options with a strike of 3 cents. So it is possible that they could come into the money, and that could provide some liquidity to the company. It may be a bit of a stretch from where we are today, but nevertheless, it's something that is possible in theory. And of course, to fund a program of any substance, it is likely that we'll need more money. So it's a circuitous way to get round to the fact that we will likely need to raise money some stage in the future. It's just when we do that and what the circumstances are and who we involve in that raising. So we don't have anything specifically planned right at the moment, but it is on our radar.
Okay, do you see difficulties in raising money in the junior uranium investing? I mean, you are probably talking with companies, with your peers, etc. Do you guys have difficulties in raising money?
Not as such. Like there's no straight answer to that.
Of course.
If I was raising
just your general thought.
Yeah, I think last year was difficult. We've had people interested in investing in us for the reason that we are located in Wyoming in amongst major players, and it looks like a jurisdiction where our projects could get, could be advanced without too many difficulties, and we sort of understand the value of the projects, and when we don't see that appearing in our share price necessarily. But if you look back and say, well, in the last cycle, uranium projects like ours might have had a value of, you know, somewhere between $4 and $6 a pound in ground at a uranium price of $65.
Yeah.
So we're certainly not getting that kind of valuation at the moment. We hover between sort of $1 and $2, and more towards the one end. So we think there's some value there that hasn't arrived in our share price, and we see other investors are seeing that as well. They're approaching us and saying, well, you know, they'd like to invest now because they think that there's a possibility that our share price will go up. So we are getting interest, and we think that it certainly is different to last year, no question. There was still some interest last year. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there's a lot of people who do understand the uranium thesis at a global level. They understand the story in the US, and they understand that there's an opportunity for them to get involved before the followers in the marketplace see the value and jump on board. And so, you know, they want to time it, but they don't want to do it necessarily at a price that we would find interesting. So in one sense, yes, we think there is appetite. We haven't tested it yet, but we believe that if we did go and test it, we'd have a reasonable chance of succeeding. It's just a matter of who we get involved.
Okay. That was Bruce Lane, Executive Director for GTI Energy. Bruce, thank you once again for coming to my show, and I wish you luck with all your projects. And let's discuss on some new news on the company plans and developments. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Lucien. I'll hope to speak to you again soon.